Yo, what's going on YouTube? It's your boy Light back at it with another YouTube video. And in today's video, we're going to be doing, let's talk about the Blackest Night uh, saga, I guess. So yeah, or comic book, because it is a comic book. Uh, yeah, so I just finished recently reading The Blackest Night, and I gotta say, pretty good comic book. I do like it. Uh, yeah, just quick warning, spoilers, of course, even though it's like 10 years old. Uh, But anyways, yeah, let's get into this. So yeah, known as one of like the more definitive Green Lantern story, or I don't even know if it's really considered a Green Lantern story, but I've heard a lot of good things about it, and it's definitely pretty interesting. Uh, and it's like one of the more, I think it was the first, it might have been the first to be kind of like first story, crossover story in kind of like the New 52 era in the sense, or rebirth, because it's kind of like a rebirth kind of. I'm pretty sure this takes place like right after like Flash Rebirth, pretty much, because I remember there's certain things in this. For example, actually, this takes place I think actually before, because I think they mentioned some stuff with this comic in the Flash Rebirth, because I actually read that as well. Uh, that was one thing with this. It's kind of confusing how the timeline works in this, but I'm pretty sure this comic was kind of used to reboot the larger DC universe, because it brought back a lot of characters and revived them and stuff like that. So that was one thing as well, which was pretty interesting to note. But anyways, let's begin. So basically, in synopsis form, a new corp has emerged called the Black Lanterns, who basically are Death, led by I think this is Black Hand. My apologies, like I mess up on the names and stuff like that. It's kind of hard to remember everything, because I'm not sure if I've ever really said this, but I do read a lot of comics in a day and stuff like that. So sometimes I kind of screw up on some of the words and stuff like that. Like, for example, his name could be not Blackhand. So that's just important to know going forward. Uh, so yeah, he basically leads the Black Lanterns, and all the lanterns basically team up together to fight this new Corps. So yeah, it is written by Jeff Johns, drawn by Ivan Reese, and also with Ockler Albert and Joe Prado. So yeah, I'm actually pleasantly surprised Jeff Johns did a pretty good job on this. I mean, honestly, my opinion on Jeff Johns is definitely changing over time. First of all, I think he does decently. I mean, I do like Flashpoint Paradox. I do like Blackest Night. I think Flash Rebirth's pretty good for the most part. So I do think Jeff Johns is pretty interesting in that aspect. But I mean, I know Jeff Johns, like he's ruined some other stuff, and I'm not a huge fan of. Oh, some of these one-off stories kind of suck from him. I can't even lie. But yeah, that was one thing. But I do think he's pretty good in this though. Uh, so yeah, continuing on. I definitely thought this was kind of like zombies in a sense. I thought this was kind of like Marvel, not Marvel zombies, but zombies. I feel like how Marvel has Marvel zombies, of course, DC should have had Blackest Night. Honestly, I don't know why they made DC's when they had this. This is basically like a zombie story, if you think about it. Just because, like, for example, these core lanterns and everything, which is from all cores like orange, red, yellow, all that. Basically, we're fighting together, and they were basically fighting again. The Black Lanterns which are essentially zombies. I can't even lie. They're basically zombies. Uh, and it was interesting to kind of see that, and like even like they're battling off to death, and some characters even died. You saw different characters die. For example, like you saw, for example, characters getting like killed and then being revived into, for example, Garth Aqualad. He was killed and then he was made into a Black Lantern, similar to like the way a zombie works. So that was pretty interesting to kind of note as well. I thought that was pretty interesting to see. Because this kind of is like a zombie type thing. Uh, I mean, in terms of like whether this story is really classified as a Green Lantern story, honestly, I don't really know. I would classify as more of like a Lantern type story, just because it heavily involves lanterns. It doesn't just involve Green Lantern. So that's one thing. Although like Hal Jordan's kind of the main character, pretty much, I'm pretty like all the lanterns have an equal role and stuff like that. As well, Flash is in this a lot too, so that's important to note. Uh, and this showcase a lot more. I feel like this showcase a lot more of like the lanterns and stuff like that, which I actually liked a lot, and I thought was pretty interesting. Well, yeah. In terms of like whether you should read this comic if you just got into comics or something like that, honestly, I would advise you not to. This is not a beginner friendly comic. I can't even lie. I was even I wasn't confused, but I mean I was even like rereading a few things just to make sure like it kind of made a little less sense to me at certain times. Like you gotta know a lot of stuff pre everything. Like there's some things, for example, like when did Aquaman die? I don't remember that ever happening. Same with like Batman. So I'm not exactly sure on that part, those parts like that. Uh, so that's just one thing. Like you gotta know when that happens. But I mean, personally, I didn't know that happened. I would say didn't remember it happened. I still understood the story and stuff like that. In the end, they were kind of pretty much revived and stuff like that. But I mean, it's helpful to know, for example, how Jordan used to be Parallax, for example, and also, for example, Flash was specifically Barry Allen was pretty much gone from mainstream or comics in general for a while there. So they do mention that a few times, and also how Jordan has Parallax too. So that's important to know. They also, uh, what was interesting too is they mentioned stuff from previous comics though, but they mentioned it properly, like that infamous Kyle Rayner girlfriend in a fridge type thing, where his girlfriend was killed and put in a fridge. So one of the most what's the word I'm looking for here? Uh, infamous comic moments where it was like that's like some serious stuff there, but so that's something like that, for example. But I did like how this lantern story is. Honestly, your opinion could be different depending on what the way it is. Like personally, I'm a big fan of like the whole lantern thing. I'm I really like the Green Lanterns and stuff like that. They're some of my favorite characters in all of comics, as well as just like the lanterns in general. Even the other lanterns, I think they're pretty cool. The whole idea of lanterns are pretty cool. But honestly, I could see maybe perhaps you not liking it if you were, say, not a fan of the Green Lantern. I mean, not a fan of lanterns in general and the concept of it, or you're not a fan of like zombies. Then it kind of sucks out a little bit. I can't even lie. Pretty much the whole comic, honestly, in my this is what I kind of see. Is pretty much Core fights zombies, and then Core gets White Lanterns, which is Life Lanterns, and basically just destroys all the zombies. That's and revives people. That's literally how it is. Uh, yeah, that's basically the comic. That's all. That's what you gotta think about here. Uh, Nothing big really happens other than that. I'm pretty sure this was also meant to kind of like reboot the new to DC Rebirth and stuff like that. So there's a lot of questions at the end of this. Uh, for example, one of the biggest questions I personally have is the whole Dead Man scenario. Like Dead Man is of course dead, and in the end he ends up getting revived, which completely screws up the whole thing because now he's not Dead Man anymore. So that's another thing I'm kind of curious on in terms of that too. Uh, as well as there's some stupider questions. For example, like why didn't Sue and Ralph Dibny get revived? That was just one thing, one big thing right there. Uh, as well that I can personally think of. And also my questions as well, which probably are answered already. But like, how did Aquaman die? How did Batman die? I'm really curious why. because they were dead even before this comic came out. So I'm not too sure what happened there, which I'm very curious about. Also, what happened with the White Lanterns and stuff like that. That's another thing. I'm gonna try and follow up kind of to see what's happening with this. Uh, but yeah, for the most part, it's a pretty interesting story. Honestly, I give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. Not, I mean, it's good for a comic, like a zombie kind of lover and Lantern Corp kind of lover. But I mean, if you don't like those two things, you're not gonna like it. Uh, yeah, for the most part, I would say 8.5. But anyways, it wasn't a bad comic, but I mean, it wasn't the greatest. But anyways, that's pretty much it though. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next video. Peace.